Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful comparison, one that a lot of people use to try and make sense of a conflict that feels, well, impossibly complex. It's all about borders, the stories we tell about them, and the histories they leave behind, completely unfinished. Let's get right into it.
You've probably heard it. It usually goes something like this. After World War I, right, the old empires just crumbled. And the winners, they just got out their pens and redrew the maps. Suddenly, you have new countries like Iraq and Lebanon and Jordan. Then a little later, Pakistan gets carved out of British India. So the story goes, Israel was just another one of them, born in that same messy, chaotic colonial period.
And hey, just a quick thing. If you get something out of these kinds of clear, concise explainers, taking a second to like, share, or subscribe to the Project Human podcast, it honestly makes a huge difference and helps us keep doing this. Okay, back to that story. This line of thinking leads to a really sharp question, one that you might have even asked yourself. Why is Israel singled out? Why does it get treated like this unique moral crisis when, let's be honest, so many other countries have these incredibly complicated and often pretty violent origin stories? It's a question that feels really fair to ask.
And this is absolutely crucial to understand. This narrative, it's not some crazy propaganda. It's believed by a lot of smart, thoughtful, decent people. Its power doesn't come from being a lie. It comes from being built on incomplete truths, which, as we know, are often the most convincing stories of all.
So, first things first, let's actually take this story seriously. Let's unpack why it feels so right, why this simple comparison just seems so logical and fair to so many people.
You see, the whole thing has this really powerful emotional logic. It taps right into our basic sense of fairness. It makes you ask, okay, why is there this massive global outrage over Gaza, but comparatively just crickets on the horrific stuff that's happened in Yemen or Syria? It frames Israel as just another country born out of colonialism, no better, no worse, and it makes you question what really feels like a glaring double standard.
But here's the thing. What feels fair and the hard, messy facts of history, well, they don't always line up one-to-one. So let's try to untangle the actual histories here and see how these places, which started from a kind of similar point, ended up on such wildly different paths.
All right, so a super quick history refresh. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire is gone. Poof. Britain and France basically carve up the Middle East and draw the lines for these new states. All the while, Zionist migration to Palestine, which actually started decades earlier, is picking up steam. By 1947, the same year India is partitioned, Jewish land ownership in Palestine is sitting at around 6 or 7%. A year later, 1948, war breaks out. That war leads to the creation of Israel and to what Palestinians call the Nakba, or the catastrophe.
So let's put these two origin stories right next to each other. You've got Pakistan, born from the 1947 partition of British India, this idea that Muslims and Hindus needed separate nations. Then you have Israel, emerging from the 1948 war after the UN's partition plan was rejected by Arab states. Both were born from the ashes of British colonial rule, and both births were incredibly violent.
And this just shows you the sheer human scale of that violence. The Partition of India, it was one of the biggest, fastest, most brutal migrations in human history. We're talking about 14 million people displaced. The Nakba displaced over 700,000 Palestinians. Both were just humanitarian catastrophes on a scale that's hard to even imagine. But this is where the two histories really start to diverge. So here's the big question, right? If both events were so catastrophic, why is one basically a closed, if tragic, chapter of border drawing in a history book, and the other is this raw, open wound that bleeds into our politics, our headlines every single day? This is the crucial difference.
So why didn't it settle? Well, for one, unlike the Partition of India, the 1948 war never ended with a final, agreed-upon territorial deal. Then you have the immense religious symbolism of the land itself, especially Jerusalem, which makes any kind of compromise incredibly difficult. Plus, Israel has had this huge, sustained backing from Western powers, which turns a regional conflict into a global one. And maybe most critically, while India and Pakistan became states, the Palestinians did not. They remain a stateless people, living under military occupation, a blockade, or as refugees to this day.
And here it is. This is the sentence that really gets to the heart of it. Pakistan's birth was terrible, but it was terminal. It was a brutal, horrific cut, but it did, in the end, create two recognized states with borders. Israel's birth was also terrible, but it was unfinished. And it's that unfinished business that we are all still living with today. So let's circle all the way back to that original story, that really simple comparison we started with.
Now we can start to see how it's built out of these powerful but incomplete truths. Let's break it down piece by piece and try to see the whole picture.
Okay, so look at these narrative fragments versus the missing history. The story says borders were redrawn everywhere. That's true, but the missing history is that only this conflict has stayed fundamentally unresolved for over 75 years. Another line you might hear is, there were no Palestinians, which is just false. But what is true is that a distinct political Palestinian national identity became much, much stronger after 1948. And that last question, why Gaza, not Yemen? It's an emotionally fair question, but it ignores the completely different geopolitical reality of Israel's deep, deep ties to the West.
And this gets to the heart of everything, really. Narratives are so tempting because they simplify. They take a messy reality and turn it into a story that's easy to tell and easy to understand. History, on the other hand, well, it resists being simple. It's complicated, it's messy, it's full of contradictions. And when we choose that simple story over the complex history, we aren't really seeing clearly. We're just looking through a lens that someone else handed us.
So what does real understanding even look like here? It's not about choosing a side. It's not about playing some grim game of deciding which historical tragedy was worse. It's about expanding the frame. It's about being able to see that the immense pain of the partition doesn't somehow cancel out the pain of the Nakba. It's about being able to hold all of these overlapping, competing, painful histories in your head at the same time.
You know those lines that were drawn on maps a century ago? They didn't just create countries. They created these incredibly powerful, unfinished stories that we are all still living inside of today. And making sense of them means we have to move beyond the easy comparisons and maybe, just maybe, step outside the familiar arguments of right and wrong. Thanks for watching.